Literary Review Editors Prize, the Times Literary Supplement Poetry Competition, and the Kinnereth Gensler Award from Alice James Books, among other honors. His work has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. He has taught at Columbia University and SUNY Purchase, and he currently teaches literature and writing at Manhattanville College. His first collection of poetry, Fugue for Other Hands, was recently selected by Jean-Marie Beaumont as the winner of the 2011 Cider Press Review Book Award. Beaumont writes of Joe's poetry, "To my mind, this book embodies further, deeper, wilder. It is never timid or tamed, has no easy comfort or uplift to offer, but immerses us in the disturbances of living on this mortal earth from start to finish." Joe.
Thanks, Genevieve. It's great to be here and to meet Britain for the first time, and really to meet you better when I read your book. I'm thrilled to do that one, probably this evening or tomorrow. The first poem I'd like to read, I sometimes do this strange thing with myself where I tell myself that I'm never going to sort of write a poem with a certain title or include a certain word, and then that word haunts me until I make that, until it happens somehow. So horribly, to my mind, this first poem is called Tattoo. All night I've listened to the voice of a dead singer from Memphis, Tennessee, who jumped up my stairs with a carnation over each ear once, and showed me his frail entrance wound trembling over his eye like a hive, who convinced me the voice of Christ is only the tenor of every slave who forgot to be your father, then said he'd watched his family carry a stallion from their house in summer while it burned through a Mississippi night, and would I listen more? I have always wanted to climb inside his voice and paint a huntress up there, like a tribe I must come from. I have always wanted to sleep with the nails of Christ in my mouth and suck whatever word he didn't draw from them, bury them with his blue hair in a constant orchard. I have wanted to eat that fruit again. But tonight, I only want to crawl down there with you, brother, into the water, because I have been listening to your voice and all its yellow locusts sifting through the trees I planted by hand alone in these fields, because I was the one who took those blossoms from your ears and laid them out on the wooden table, because I remember how you placed the river like a whetstone in your throat, and fell, and the water has washed off the word you carried on your shoulder and did not want. So as Genevieve mentioned, my first book is going to be coming out in January of next year, and more or less all the few poems I'm going to read to you this evening are from that book. As you can imagine from the title, Fugue for Other Hands, I think that's my way of apologizing for just being an obsessive maniac, for sort of returning to the same themes over and over again. And I try to make that highbrow by calling it fugue, I think. So some of the poems in the book are notionally, at least, in the voices of different composers. So this poem is again notionally in the voice of the composer Gustav Mahler, and it imagines him sort of in a little journey to sort of where we are now, which is, so it's called Mahler in New York. Now when I go out, the wind pulls me into the grave. I go out to part the hair of a child I left behind, and he pushes his face into my cuffs to smell the wind. If I carry my father with me, it is the way a horse carries autumn in its mane. If I remember my brother, it is as if a buck had knelt down in a room I was in. I kneel, and the wind kneels down in me. What is it to have a history, a flock buried in the blindness of winter? Try crawling with 2 violins into the hallway of your father's hearse. It is filled with sparrows. Sometimes I go to the field, and the field is bare. There is the wind which entrusts me. There is a woman walking with a pail of milk, a man who tilts his bread in the sun. There is the black heart of a mare in the milk, or is it the wind, the way it goes? I don't know about the wind, about the way it goes. All I know is that sometimes someone will pick up the black violin of his childhood and start playing. That it sits there on his shoulder like a thin gray falcon asleep in its blinders. And that we carry each other this way because it is the way we would like to be carried. Sometimes with mercy, sometimes without. I'll read one now. It's I mean, I guess I'm discovering that strange thing because, I got, when one gets, I'm sure Brittany knows this experience, where one gets one's book sort of out there in the world and sort of sees it as a whole and then looks back at it. It's very scary, weird, strange, horrifying, all these things. Yes, thank you. And I think that there's always a distance between the piece, when you're done with it, but then it sort of increases somehow. So I just looked at this piece this morning when I thought about doing this reading, and it's called Elegy, and it's a mourning poem. I think it's a death poem, and but it seems even more strange to me now. Anyway, it's called Elegy. The black bear that crashed through the hedge, as the 4 of us were pissing into a drainage ditch, stood a long time before our drunkenness, waiting. Behind us, the crops flared into their own dull light. We could see it was a bear cub. Someone said yes already. We fell heavy on it, and as it heaved under us in the brambles, I could see its eyes roll back into themselves under the weight of our breath, which must have come to it not as the scent of murder or of blood rot, but of newness, because it opened its muzzle and trilled its nostrils, pushed its neck back into the earth as it sucked and drew the scent of these 4 otherworldly figures deep into its lungs, asking of the body, "Do I remember this?" And we saw the ochre bulbs of its eyes, which had swung out to a distance not its own, fall back to us, and flare in their darkness a memory that flushed down the measure of its limbs. And I can see you sprawled across that startled black body, and what it was that must have rushed through the length of it, which can sniff the change in a Rottweiler buck that stomps and blats in the distance, and is not yet mindful of its wound. And the sounds of our bodies traveling outward over the husks and the cows lumbering off to lie down in the harvest. Their slicked bodies flashing in the dusk, dumb, luminous, but not yet burning, not yet consumed by anything.